the great holiday of Chanuka, which is coming up Sunday night, as my friend told me, our friend Nisim informed us, that this holiday is full of interesting and amazing things. First of all, to understand one thing, right? What is the reason of the holiday? What's the history of the holiday a little bit, to understand what really happened, what really occurred. Right, so basically what we had Greek domination of the Jewish people at that time. And it was becoming a very difficult exile. What does that mean, exile, by the way? They call Greece one of the exiles.
Is that when Aman
of the Jewish people? No, that's a little bit right. That's a different story. Right, exactly. That was before. That was before.
I'm sorry.
So anyway, that's okay. So the question is, first of all, right? One thing you have to understand: why do we call the Greek domination of the Jewish people exile? Because they were not in exile at the time. The Jews, they were in their land.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So why do we call it an exile? What's the reason why we call it an exile?
From their own place?
The ruler of Syria, who was a Greek, wanted the Jews to eat pork and not be Jewish.
Yeah, he wanted to Hellenize them, basically. That's the idea. You're right. But why do we call that an exile? So, by the way, the truth is that if you want to know that exile in the Jewish term of exile, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a physical thing, a physical exile. There's also something like a spiritual exile.
Right.
What does that mean? Who was in exile? We, during Hanukkah, were not in exile. We were there in Israel. Even though, by the way, there were some Jews also who were living outside of Israel. I think you can say the majority of the Jews they never came back to the Second Temple. Right? If you look at the history, by the way, in the book of Ezra, how many Jews really came back to the Second Temple era?
20%.
We're talking about 40,000 Jews around. That's the number. So basically, most of the Jews never came back. But what happened was that community grew exponentially, very, very fast, and it became millions of Jews. Eventually, the second temple stood for 420 years. That's the history, right? So what happened was that the Jews were not in exile; they were in their land. So why they call it an exile? What's the reason why? So the exile that we're talking about in Jewish term is not only physical; it's also spiritual. What is a spiritual exile? We say, right, that the Shekhinah was in exile. You know what that means?
The
Shekhinah is a divine presence, right? There are periods in the world where divine presence is more apparent, it's more felt, it's more feasible. There are periods where divine presence disappears. It's like we don't really see God's presence so much. It becomes very hidden, right? Very oblique, just disappears, kind of like disappears. That's what they say, right? People always say, right? Where was God? Where was God? During the Second World War, where was he during this time? Where was he? Where'd he go? So the answer is that he was in exile. God was in exile. What does that mean? He's not here.
You're on your own.
So when the Jewish people, talk about exile, we're talking about the exile of God, in a sense. What does that mean? His presence is not here. So what does that mean? When God's presence is not here, he propagates evil. And this is why we have all these evil leaders that propagate. Pops up this guy, pops up that guy, right? All kinds of derelicts, lowlives, all kinds of hoodlums, and all kinds of things like this. They start to rule the world. People who shouldn't be even ruling their apartment building. These people, they're dangerous people. All of a sudden, they're ruling the whole world. So what happened was that the Greek exile was a very deep exile. It was a very difficult exile. It was a very harsh exile. Why? What's the reason why it was so harsh? Right? They say that the Greeks basically wanted to uproot the Jewish religion. They wanted to totally abolish it. They were not really interested in abolishing the Jews per se. That's like what Hitler wanted to do, to exterminate the Jews. Like you exterminate, some pests, that you have in your house, whatever. That's what Hitler wanted to do, basically. But they were looking not to obliterate the Jews. They want to obliterate the Jewish religion. Yes. That's what they were trying to do. That was this was, by the way, the first time in history that there was a period like this. There was a phenomenon like this, that they were not really going for the Jews. They were going for their religion. They wanted to uproot the religion, separate the religion from the Jews. What does that mean? They want to turn the Jews into, a bunch of Hellenists, basically. What does that mean? Secular, minded, very, very athletic kind of, body, very, secular kind of approach to life. very, this sport and that sport and all kinds of competition and gymnasiums and stadiums and things like, they want to remove the Jews from that Bet HaMidrash, from the study hall where they're studying Talmud and Gemara, and they want to remove them from that and put them into gymnasiums and make them into athletes, with muscular people and all kinds of stuff like this. This was the idea. They want to separate. So what happened was that that's why we call it exile, because the exile was of Shekhinah, the divine presence
They wanted to turn us into a bunch of Caitlyn Jenners.
That's a good one.
They kind of won though, Rob. Jews listen to sports,
okay.
sports nonsense.
And who was Caitlyn Jenner?
Yeah.
Bruce Jenner.
Bruce Jenner. Okay, I got you. In his former life, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened was that they devised a plan. They had a very strong plan for this, right? What does that mean? They curtailed Jewish activity, religious activity. You're not allowed to keep Shabbat. You're not allowed to do Brit Milah. You're not allowed to study Torah. You're not allowed to do all kinds of things. Why? To remove the Jewish identity from the Jewish people. To uproot it totally. And anybody who would break these laws was liable to death, liable to all kinds of punishment. This was a very scary time. It was a very, very frightening kind of thing. And there was also an evil leader, that was in charge of this, right? Was Antiochus, right? As he said, he was the one who was appointed to be the leader of the Greek Empire in Syria, and he also, wanted to also rule over the land of Israel as well, same area, same region. So this guy Antiochus was a very big villain. He was a very big rasha. And he started to afflict the Jews very, very strong way. So one of the things, right, that they had, one of the afflictions that they had over the Jews, amongst many others, was that every woman who would get married, young lady, 18 years old, 16 years old, whatever it is, before being with her husband the first night, he had to go to the governor, the Greek governor, and be with him for one night. That was like initiation, you know what I mean? You get initiation, and then once you're initiated, you go to your husband, you understand? He's this lowlife punk, has to be with every woman before he goes to her husband. This is what it was, you understand? This was like a total degradation, to degrade the Jews like this, to humiliate them like this, humiliation like this. You have to go to the governor first, and be with this slime, this, uncircumcised piece of wood, whatever it is, right? And that's what it was. So what happened was that this was very, very disgusting, especially to the family of the Kohanim, right? There were the priests at that time, the Kohanim, who were very holy people, and we call them the Chashmonaim, the family of the Chashmonaim. That these people were very holy, and what they did was that basically they made a kingdom in Israel, the Kohanim at that time. They were the ones who became kings, Chashmonaim. And these people were very powerful people. They were very strong, very tremendous belief, big rabbis, big scholars, and everything. And they rose up against the Greek Empire. That's what they did, right? But what did they rise up? The problem was like this, right? That the Jews could not organize a real army at that time. Why? Because most of the people in Israel were also Hellenized already. They were on the other side. They were not on the side of the Jews. They were totally Hellenized. They were proselytized into that stuff, that culture, Greek culture. They couldn't put an army together. They didn't have enough people. So that's how bad it was. Can you imagine? The Greeks managed to take over the soul of the Jew, and to corrupt the soul. That's what they did, and they succeeded.
Just like Pharaoh.
You know what I mean? We talked about that, by the way. That the Egyptian exile was really like a compilation of all the exiles together. So it also included that element as well. But what we're saying is that the Greeks managed to basically to uproot the Jewish spirit. They uprooted.
Sounds like
so what happened was...
Sounds like Hollywood.
Yeah, and they're the ones that also interpreted the Bible, right? They're the ones that interpreted the words in the Bible.
Well, they did all kinds of things. But anyway, the point is that now what happened was that they decided to rise up. And the first thing that happened was, right, that there was one of the daughters of that family, her name was Yehudit,
Judith?
Right. So this lady, what happened was that she was getting married. So, it's now her turn to go into this, slimeball governor, whatever, and be with him, the first night, whatever. So what happens is that she has to go after the marriage, after they do the chuppah, can you imagine? He has to go and be humiliated with his man, the first night, like this. What a disgrace, right? So she goes to this governor, and he's waiting for her. Can you imagine? Beautiful lady, whatever. and she decides to pull a trick on him, So what was the trick that she pulled? Right? She fed him some food, let's have a little dinner before, candlelight, this kind of stuff, whatever. So what she did was, she gave him something to sedate him, to put him to sleep. What was that? It was like milk. Because milk, hot milk, like it makes you drowsy. Right. So she made him some milk. She made him drink it, and once he like dozed off, from the milk, so she took like a big, sword, and she cut off his head, chopped it off. Can you imagine? She was a tough lady, this lady, right? She chopped off his head, and she took it out, and showed everybody, here, this is what you get for doing this to the Jews, So once this happened, this was the beginning of the rebellion. So basically, what happened was that the Greeks were very, furious with the Jews, and they decided to, bring like a very big army to quell the rebellion. It says in the book of Bam Loez, how many people were there, right? That they brought to quell the rebellion? 1 million soldiers they brought. Can you imagine? 1 million.
What Greeks?
Yeah, Greek soldiers.
So what book did you say
this is Bam Loez. So they brought 1 million man army.
Ezra and Nehemiah.
It's like the attack on Troy.
Bam Loez. So the 1 million people. So how many people did the Jews have, by the way? You want to know? 12. 12 people. Can you imagine? This was exactly the family of the Hashmonaim. That's all they had. There was one father and sons. That's it. That was the whole thing.
Why in all these rebellions none of the Jews uprise against? Why they don't?
Because they were Hellenized. They were on the other side.
All?
Yeah, most of them. Like the vast majority of the Jews were already Hellenized. Just like today, most of the Jews are like secular, whatever, they're not really, how many, what's the intermarriage rate in Europe? They say 80%, 90%, right? In America, it's like 60%, 70%.
We're done.
Yeah, I mean, what do you have left? What's there to the,
So what are we trying to save then?
That little remnant that we save every generation, that's what keeps us alive. Otherwise, these people are all going to...
Smaller every generation.
Yeah, but it keeps also regenerating, That's the way it is. It's a game, It's like it always comes, goes. So what happened was that most of them were held. So what happened? They had 12, can you imagine? 12 people against 1 million. That's what it says in Yam Loez. So what kind of war can you wage like that, right? What do you do? How do you start a war like that? What do you do, right? So it says over there that they basically had a deal with the pact with the Persians, the Jews at that time. That what the Persians promised them they're going to come and help them against the Greeks. They had some kind of a pact with them, right? Exactly. So
why would the Persians even bother making a deal with 12
because
miserable Jews?
No, they made a deal with the country in general. They had a deal. Like today, they have all kinds of contracts. They have all kinds of pacts, all kinds of military pacts, all kinds of things. Same thing over there. They say the same. So what happened was that the Persians were supposed to come and help them. Just like today, by the way, there are these pacts, right? That if something happens over there, the Americans are supposed to come and help. Will they? I don't know. We don't know.
Right.
Yeah. Will they keep their word? Who knows? But there is a pact like that. So what happened was they also had a pact like that with the Persians.
NATO.
No, NATO is for Europe. That's something else. We're talking about the Middle East, right? That's a different thing.
Oh, okay.
They have a pact with Israel.
Okay. Yes.
It's a private pact.
NATO wants to wipe out Israel.
Okay, whatever. So anyway, the point is, right, that they had a discussion like this. It says in the Mem Loez. What was the discussion? They said, listen, we have 1 million people on our doorstep.
Right.
We're 12. Like corresponding to 12 tribes, basically. That's all we are. So they said, should we wait for the Persians? They'll come and help us?
No.
Because we have a pact with them. So what happened was that one of them, knocked on the table. He said, "No way! Nothing to wait for. Right? We have to do it ourselves." Can you imagine?
It's 1 million people.
You cannot rely on a human being.
So, when as a Jew, right, that when you say something, they always ask you, right? A religious Jew, they always ask you, okay, you say that like that. What's your source? Give me a source for that. Maybe from the Bible, maybe from the Talmud, from the Midrash. Where's your source? So they asked him, how do you know that? How do you know we shouldn't wait? Maybe we should wait. What's the problem? What, you want to rely on a miracle?
What's another day?
12 against 1 million is a miracle. It's a miracle, yeah. So you know what he said, right? Doesn't it say in the book of Yirmiyahu, right? In Jeremiah, it says, Arura geber asher yiftach ba'adam v'sam b'sar zero'o. You know what that means? Cursed is the man who relies on flesh and blood. You know, that's what it says, right? You shouldn't rely on flesh and blood. You should rely on God. So he says, doesn't it say that cursed is the person who relies on flesh and blood? How are we relying on the Persians? So therefore he said, right? No, we have to do it ourselves. Let's go. So they went out. Can you imagine? The miracle was that they beat the 1,000,000-man army. This was a total miracle. Can you imagine this kind of thing? This was a total miracle. By the way, it's not the only. If you see in the Bible, like tons of miracles like this, dozens we're talking about. You know, if you really learn the Bible, you know, you guys are a little bit more Hollywood style. But if you really learn the real Bible, you know, you guys are more Hollywood. But if you really learn the real Bible, you'll see over there. There's tons of miracles like that.
Does the Torah depict how 12 Jews?
Well, you know, that's up to the directors in Hollywood, you know, to make that whole, you know, imagination, you know, these battles, you know,
by the way,
you know, use your imagination, whatever. You know.
By the way, in the movie, after the Exodus, okay, when they got to the mountain and stuff, and they were talking about, and that's the Pharaoh's daughter. They did say that in the movie. Okay, God bless. So at least they got something right. Okay. So anyway, the point is, right, that can you imagine they defeated? This was one of the miracles of Chanuka. The military defeat that they defeated, they repelled the Greeks. The Persians, what can I tell you, you know?
So it doesn't depict the actual nuances. No,
it doesn't talk about that. It doesn't talk about that.
It just says that miracle.
But if you really want to know, by the way, if you really want to know how this happens, these kinds of things, you know what they say, right? The truth is always the same thing. It's a recurring phenomenon. Yeah. You know what it is? Every time we see like a battle in the Bible, some kind of miraculous victory, things like this, how does it happen? You know what the answer is? That HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends like a confusion in their camp of the enemies, and they start fighting against each other. He turns them one against the other.
So
you understand?
It's a tangible.
Yeah.
When people tell you, when people that actually don't know how physically. In the 1967 war, we were able to defeat, you know,
you
know, basically when nobody was expecting it, Moshe Dayan, you know, flew jets over them, you know, destroyed their airports, you know, crippled them before they even got a head start.
The truth is, if you look at all,
you know what I'm saying, and they tell you it's a miracle, but it took brains.
If you look at all the stories that they talk about the Arabs from their side, they say that we felt as if the Israelis had like a lot of military might. The sand was fighting against us, they would say.
Yes, that's true. What you're saying. Yes, I know about that. I know about that.
So basically, there was diversion.
So basically, what happens is, right? See, I want to tell you guys something you have to understand. That it says, right, in the pasuk, in the verse, in the Bible, it says, right, Aj Yashir, that we read every day in the morning. It says, Hashem ish milchama. What does that mean? That Hashem is the man of war. What does that mean? We don't really make the war. Hashem makes the war. We think we're doing it, you know, but really it's something from above.
The Lord of hosts will do battle.
You know what I mean? Exactly. Right. So, point. Very nice translation.
So
King James.
Even if Putin now decides to attack, and start a war against Ukraine, even that war.
So what happens is like this, right? That when there's two nations that are going to war against each other, there's a judgment that goes on in heaven.
Even if Israel has nothing to do with it.
No, we're saying two nations are going against each other. Yeah. There's a judgment. What's a judgment? Which nation is more righteous? Which one has more merits? That's the one who wins. So what happens is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? What he does is every angel has a guardian. Every nation has a guardian angel over them. So he weakens that angel. He gives him, puts him into a headlock like this. You know. Okay. You know. Don't move. Don't budge.
Twist his arm.
So exactly. Twist his arm. Don't move. So he can't do nothing, you know. So once he does that, his army also cannot fight. You know what I mean? It's all like a function of something which comes from above. So what happens is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's what he does. When he wants to destroy the enemies of the Jews or any other enemy, whatever it is, he makes them confused and they fight with each other. That's what happens, right? This you see throughout history, all over the Bible, all over everywhere. Same thing, same idea. So what does that mean? HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't really need a lot of people to win a war, right? To him. Right, it says right about from same thing, right? As I said, Az Yashir. It talks about the victory over the Egyptians at the Red Sea. What does it say over there, right? Ki ba'asus paro, right? It says that the horse of Paro came, you know, to kill the Jews at the sea, right? So they asked the Chazal, Right? Why does it say sus one like one horse? It says one horse. There was hundreds and thousands.
Horse.
You know, so it says kiba sus paro one. He had one horse. Is that what he had? You know. So the Chazal answer in the Gemara and Talmud, you know what it says, right? That for Hashem, all those horses like one. He doesn't, you know, it's like overthrowing one horse. You know, just, you know, like a domino. You know, just like squash it. You know, with your finger. That's what it is. It's one horse for him. It doesn't make it. You know, he's not impressed with that kind of stuff.
But those 12 Jews,
yeah,
did conspire some kind of a tactic, right, to win that war.
Yeah, the tactic was, you know, just to be brave, because they really were not, you know, they had no really. What kind of strategy can you make for 12 people? You know, what can you do? You know, maybe you can bring them lunch, you know, to eat something. You know, that's about it. Whatever. That was the one miracle, right? The other miracle was also regarding the oil. So what happened was that the Greeks came into the Bet HaMikdash. They came into the temple and they defiled it. What does that mean? The temple has to be conducted with purity. You know. So what they did was they came and defiled all the oils that were there and also all the other things that were there in order that they should be able to use it, the Bet HaMikdash. They should like destroy the underpinnings, you know, the spiritual the underpinning of what's going on there, foundation.
How did God allow them to enter the Holy of Holies?
They defiled it.
How do you enter into
That's a different story. That's a different idea. But
they try to break their spirit.
So what happened was that they defied. I can't get into that because it's going to take a long time to explain that.
Yeah.
But we're not here to discuss really these things, you know. So what I'm saying is like this, right? That they defiled the oils, and what happened was that they opened them up and they defiled them, you know, to make them tamei, to make them impure, because they had like a seal on them. You know what I mean? There was a seal, and if they knew if the seal was open, they knew there was defiled. So they opened up, and the one they didn't find, you know. So that one piece jar of oil they didn't find, they used that oil to light for 8 days. The candles in the Bet HaMikdash. There was a menorah there. There was a candelabra there that was lit every day. So they used it for 8 days, even though it was only for 1 day. That was also the other miracle, right? So the one miracle was the military victory. And the other one was the oil. You know, the oil of the supply of the oil. Basically, that was the two things. Why do they need 8 days? Because that was they need that much time to get new oil from the olives, you know, of the trees and stuff, to make new batch of oil and stuff. So they needed like some time. So therefore, they needed at that time to light until they got resupplied and everything. So what happened was that this was the two miracles that occurred on Hanukkah. So therefore, the rabbis made a decree, right, that we should commemorate every year this holiday, in order to commemorate this great miracle, to remember. We should never forget, right? It was a great victory, because otherwise the Greeks would have, like, you know, they would have strangled us, you know, totally strangled us.
Isn't there a story though behind the lights?
Nebuchadnezzar, no?
Yeah, what about it?
Miraculously not going out.
That was it.
Yeah.
They had one can of oil that lasted 8 days.
Right. Yeah. It lasted for 8 days.
Should have lasted like.
I'm not exactly sure what you're referring to.
Whatever he's talking about.
That what? It lasted for 8 days. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a miracle that it lasted.
Yeah, sure. There was a miracle. Yeah.
The significance of us doing
right, Lord, the 8 days.
Yeah.
So now the Chazal said, right, that in order to commemorate this holiday, it's a very simple holiday, by the way, not very complicated. You know, all you gotta do is light the candle once a day.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the whole trick.
You gotta remember
it's an easy holiday to commemorate, because it's not really something which requires a lot of effort or wisdom or, you know, something like that. Yeah, it's very simple, you know. So that's the reason why they say, right, that all the Jews are connected with Hanukkah. You know why? Because even the most simple Jews, the most non-observant, they find it like very easy. You know, just to light the candle. It's very, you know, it's very simple.
And it's a candle and looks.
Yeah. So you know, so they say that Hanukkah is a very special holiday. Why? Because it picks up all the Jews, no matter how low they are in observance and the wisdom and knowledge. Right. Even goes to the White House. Yeah. Right. Gets to the White House also. Yes. We heard about that. So it goes everywhere. You know. So it's considered to be a very significant holiday in the sense that it unites all the Jews from all the sides. You know, whatever. That's the. There's a lot to talk about regarding that, but
isn't the most significant one Yom Kippur? Because remember what you told me many years ago. Even like the most wicked person on Yom Kippur is handicapped, because it's such a solidarity of Jews.
Yeah.
Coming together on that day. That even if you want to do like that, you know, even the most terrible person seems to observe it.
Yeah, but the truth is, to be honest with you, I see now a lot of people are not observing Yom Kippur anymore. It's even that has disappeared.
Are you talking about the Georgians that smoke outside?
I don't mean to talk about anybody in particular, but there's definitely a lot of now. There's a lot of people who don't observe anymore.
Really?
Yeah, they eat and drink and everything. They don't observe it. I'm not talking about the majority. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying there's also now a lot of people who don't observe that either. Okay, whatever. But anyway, the point is, right, that Chanuka, in order to basically fulfill this mitzvah, very easy. But the truth is, right, that if you want to really do it the best way, you want to do it the proper way, so there's actually a lot of things that you need to know, right, in order to do everything properly. So, first of all, right, to understand one thing, that the best way to fulfill the mitzvah of Chanuka, obviously, you have to use candles, right? You shouldn't really use electricity. There are reasons for that, by the way, that the poskim, the poskim talk about that. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you're saying, but they say, right, that a person should not use electricity to use for Hanukkah candles, because a lot of poskim say that it's not kosher, to do it this way. So a person should avoid that. Try to buy candles, but also, right, regarding the candles as well, there are different levels, right? The best way is to use olive oil, right?
Real oil.
Olive oil. Right? Why is that? Why is olive oil the best? Because that's what it was used in the Bet HaMikdash. Bet HaMikdash, they used to light with only olive oil, and also it was like virgin olive oil, the first press. The first press, nice, nice, very pure. That's what they used to use. So they say, right, you should try to use olive oil. That's the best thing. And they say that a person who does that, uses olive oil, gets blessed, right? With you should have children who are Talmidei Chachamim, they're Torah scholars, because olive oil is conducive to this kind of thing. By the way, the same thing also applies to Shabbat. That when you light candles on Shabbat, best thing is to use olive oil. So now, why do I tell you this? Because it's a little bit harder to do it this way. Why? Because you got to buy those, those little cups, and you got to put the wicks inside, and all that technique, and you have to know how to do all that stuff. So you got to be a little bit knowledgeable with that stuff. But once you get used to it, actually, this is the best way to do it. They also say, by the way, that olive oil burns the brightest. It has the brightest flame. And that's the reason also, another reason why, it also has a nice, it doesn't give you a bad smell, doesn't give you all kinds of bad,
you can cook with it.
Right, you can make a salad also, right, whatever. But they say olive oil is the best mitzvah, so if a person can try to do it with olive oil, this would be the best way to do it, right? But if he's a little bit, it's a little bit too much for him, so you can use also wax or paraffin, candles, you can use those things.
Lazy.
Yeah.
They don't last long, the candles.
You should try not to use
all night long, and then you can put on a dimmer to turn it.
Right. So how long? So the truth is, right, that regarding lasting long, Chazal tell us how long does it have to last Hanukkah candles? It's only a half hour. That's it.
Oh, that's
it.
Yeah,
it's a half hour. Night. After that, the mitzvah is over. So you can put it out. You can,
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, doesn't make any difference. By the way, we've seen that people who are leaving these Hanukkah candles like too long, sometimes it becomes a fire hazard. We've seen this. Houses that burn down because of this, all kinds of things. So the truth is, recommended not to leave these candles lit all night, whatever. After the mitzvah is over and there's nobody watching, people are going to sleep, you should put it out because it's a fire hazard.
Right.
This is like a dangerous thing. It's in Brooklyn last year. Yeah, you know what happened, right? Yeah. Kids died. Some kids died. Yes. Whole family perished. It was a terrible, terrible thing. It happens quite often. It happens also in Israel. Same thing. Same thing, So a person has to know there's limitations to everything. Once the half hour is over, the rabbis only said half hour. That's it. Once it's over, recommended to put it out. Unless you want to see it for a while, okay, but when you go to sleep, or people are leaving the house, don't leave candles lit and leave the house.
I have 3 menorahs.
That's good. That's very dangerous.
I got 3 menorahs. One for the big candles.
Right.
And I had my little one when I was a child.
Yeah.
My little one with the little candles.
Since you talked about that, right? There's also interesting things in halakha, Jewish law regarding how many menorahs are you supposed to light in the family, right? So there's two different customs. Two different customs. You know that, right? There's 2 different customs. One is the Ashkenazim, what they do. What the Ashkenazim, they do, every family member has his own menorah. Every kid, every daughter, every son, and they each light their own. So basically in the Ashkenazi family, you have like 6 menorahs going on there, or 7. That's the way it is. Yeah, that's a custom. Who does that going to? This goes in the Rambam. The Rambam says like that. They actually do according to Rambam. Just usually we do according to Rambam. But this time it's the opposite, right? They do according to Rambam. And what we do as Fardim is that we only light one menorah in the family. What does that mean? The father, the head of the household, right, is the one who lights the menorah, and he does it for everybody else. Who is this according to? According to Tosfot, right? Which is just the opposite, right? Okay. Usually we go according to Rambam, they go according to Tosfot. Now this is the opposite. We have just the opposite, right? Yeah, it's one of the interesting things, right? So everybody should keep their custom, whatever. But if you're alone in your house anyway, it doesn't make any difference. You're only gonna light one anyway, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of like the bread, though, right?
Yeah, the what?
Ashkenazi bread and the Sephardic bread.
Yeah.
Right?
The what?
They could eat both.
I'd love to eat both. Yeah, no problem.
In the same house.
Bring me both. I'll eat both of them.
No, in the same house.
Sure. No problem. I'll take everything. I'll take everything. Right, no problem. So,
being kosher or not kosher.
Nah,
all bread is good.
No, there's issues. There are issues there, by the way. We gotta talk about that, but this is not the time for that.
It's good to study by the light of the menorah.
Right. So the thing is like this, right? That you're not allowed to use the light of the menorah.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So what that means is that you should not use it for reading or anything like that, or counting coins or looking, the kind of stuff like this. You're not allowed to get benefit from those lights, like physical benefit. It's only for the mitzvah. So therefore, the person has to be careful about that. That's exactly the reason why we have the shamash, one extra candle we have. Mm-hmm. They say, right, if you're using it, at least you should be using that one, that it should save you from using the real candles. The truth is, right, that according to the bare bones halakha, bare bones, you're really supposed to be lighting only one candle a day. You don't have to keep increasing every day. But it says in the Talmud, right, and mehadrin, the best way to do it is to add every day, to show the miracle, to demonstrate the miracle. But if a person doesn't have enough candles to do that, he can just light one a day. That's also good enough. He can fulfill the obligation like that. But since we have,
each different one, you mean?
Every day one.
So it only needs the shamash and the one candle?
Right, that's it, right. Even the shamash you can skip, if you really don't have. If a person is poor, and he has only one, he can light just one a day. That's good enough.
Throw it or light it up.
But a match, light it with a match, whatever. Okay, but the point is, right, that since we have Baruch Hashem, we have abundance, in these times, we don't have to be so cheap, we don't have to be so frugal. So therefore, what we do is everybody lights one additional every day. They keep increasing in order to demonstrate the miracle. So we said, right, that it has to have a half hour. The question is now, right, like this: when is it the proper time to light?
Sundown, right?
So there's two customs regarding that, right? One custom is they wait till the sun goes down. Mm-hmm. Some Ashkenazim do like that, like the Gaon Levina. They say that you should light when the sun goes down. But we, right, also many Ashkenazim as well, they wait till also the stars come out. What does that mean? Another 15 minutes after.
Dark.
Right, exactly, yeah. Medium-sized stars come out.
After sundown.
Right, about 15 minutes after sundown. So the proper way to do, according to all, to fulfill your obligation, is to do 15 minutes after sundown, unless you have a custom to do it after sundown, which you don't have that, so you should do it the same way as everybody else does. What does that mean? Wait 15 minutes after the sun goes down, and then you light Chanuka candles. Why is it, by the way, that we light during that time? What's the reason why? Because they say, right, this is the time of the regel. What does that mean, regel? This is the time that people were going in the street at that time, coming home from work. Right? So therefore, you're publicizing the miracle. Pirsum Nisa, So everybody sees and publicizes everything. That's why the Chazal said you do it tafka at that time, precisely at that time. So what happens now, like this, right? That nowadays, though, things are much different, though. What does that mean? In the old days, the purpose of the Chanuka menorah was basically for the people outside to see. To publicize the miracle to the bypassers.
In the window, you mean?
Right, bypassers, yeah. Okay. So that was the main idea.
Jewish home?
Right, that's the way it was done in the beginning. But what happened was that throughout history, as time went on, this custom changed. What does that mean? The custom became basically to light candles inside the house for the family members, and not so much for the people outside.
To enjoy.
You know what I mean?
But you know what? There's less and less candles every year.
Oh, I don't know. In Israel, probably there's more and more.
Just look up.
Right.
I don't know about Israel.
Yeah, you know what? Because they're all going to Israel. That's why the lesson is. The people are moving out, going to Israel, and you have Cubans over here who are lighting, Puerto Ricans. We're lighting, all kinds of people like that, right? Whatever. So that's why you have people like, maybe less candles. More over there, less over here. Okay, whatever. Anyway, so the point is, right, that as we said, that's the reason why they light during that time. after the sun goes down, because that's the time where people are going home.
With the stars.
So the sages made a decree to light at that time, precisely. So what does that mean? That you have a half hour, because that's how it's like a half hour, that whole phenomenon. People are passing by, and getting home. Once that half hour is over, the sages said, that's it. The mitzvah is over, basically.
60th Street.
Yeah. So what does that mean? That since the sages made it this way, in the beginning, the original decree was that once that time is over, the mitzvah is also over. Basically, you can't do the mitzvah anymore. So that's why the Rambam says, right, that you can't do the mitzvah after that half hour. That's it. If you miss that half hour, you miss it altogether. Right? But nowadays it's not like that. Why is that?
You good the next day though?
Yeah, next day you can be good. Yeah, sure. But nowadays it's not like that. Why? It's because since people are getting home later, and 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever it is, everybody their own time. So it's a city that never sleeps, right? People are all the time moving around. So therefore, whenever you light it, it's going to be anyway. Somebody's going to see it.
City never sleeps.
Right? People are passing by all the time, all night. So it doesn't really matter so much as it used to. And therefore, right, and also since we're lighting for the people inside, not for the people outside anymore so much. What does that mean? In the original decree was to light the candles outside. They were lighting outside. Outside of their door, they were lighting. Not in the house. Outside the house, they were lighting. That's the way it was. But since this decree changed, the custom changed over time. Why? They say, by the way, the main reason why they changed the custom was because of danger, sakana. What does that mean? There was a danger that people would come and vandalize, these things. The Gentiles, the non-Jews. They hate the Jews, they don't like the Jews. They come and vandalize and do all kinds of things. So therefore, the custom, little by little, altered and went inside the house.
Underground.
And therefore, right, exactly, underground, yeah, exactly, yeah, right? So it became like so what happened was that now, since the custom is different, that we light inside the house. So therefore, we're not so mindful anymore about if it's going to be 4:30 or 5 or 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. It's really all the same. Why? Because you're doing it for your family, you're doing it for yourself, to see it yourself. You're not really so mindful of what's going on outside. And also, people are living in high risers, high floors.
So it's not
people are not watching those things.
It's not an exact time to light the candles.
So what does that mean? That nowadays we're not so particular about that.
Not so
right? Yeah. But anyway, they say, right, if you're home and if you're not really going to work at that time, whatever, so you should try to do it at that time anyway. Why? Because since the sages made that time to be the real proper time, so a person should try to keep it if he can. If there's there's nothing keeping him back, right? But the truth is, that if a person is coming home later, he's working, he can light also late. 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever it is.
No punishment.
You can go all night, right? Until when, by the way? Until the dawn. Once the dawn comes up, that's it, it's over.
Right.
So, a person shouldn't wait too long, but if he just wait until he gets home from work, that's fine. Or he's got something that is very important that he's doing, whatever, he can't leave it, whatever, some kind of meeting. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he can light a little bit later. He still has fulfilled the obligation of lighting the Chanuka candles, even at a later time. And he can still make the blessings. How many blessings do we make the first night?
1.
3, right? What are the blessings we make the first night? We make Le'adik Ner Chanuka, 1. She'asa Nisim La'avotenu B'yamim Hahem B'zman Hazeh, 2. And the third one is Shechianu. So we make 3 blessings. Look in the Siddur, you'll see, right? Prayer books, you'll see. The first day is 3 blessings. The rest of the days is only 2. That's the way it is, right? Why is that? Because Shechianu, we only make the first night. Mm-hmm. What does Shechianu mean? What is the meaning of that, right? We're saying, right, that we're blessing God that He brought us to this time of year, this holiday, right? The opportunity to do this mitzvah. So therefore, it's not really pertinent to say every day. Why? Once you said it once, you fulfill the obligation to say that. So therefore, the first night is 3 brachot, 3 blessings, because of Shechianu. But the other night says no Shechianu, because once you did it, you fulfilled your obligation. Mm-hmm. But you still have to do 2 blessings every night. You know what I mean? Which one? Le'adik ner Chanukah. How do you say, right? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kideshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, le'adik ner Chanukah. Right? The Sfardim say ner shel Chanukah, shel Chanukah. Right? We don't say shel, we say ner Chanukah. It's a little bit of difference in custom, right? So everybody keeps his custom, but the point is that we're saying, right, that we're blessing Hashem to give us the opportunity to do this
What's
mitzvah.
the other blessing again?
What does that mean? He made miracles for us at this time. Hashem made miracles. So one is to light the candle, and the one is that He made miracles for us, right? We talked about that, the middle people, the 8 days of the oil, all these things. So He makes 2 blessings every night, except the first night, which is 3. So now the question is like this, right? What about if a person is not home? What does he do, right? Let's say he went somewhere, he can't be home that night.
Light it in your pocket.
You know, they right in your pocket, whatever. Light in your car or whatever, right? So what do you do? What's the proper way to do, right? So they say, by the way, that if you have somebody at home who can light for you, you can rely on that. If you can't be home, it's your wife, let's say, or you have a grown-up son who can do it, somebody like that. So they can do it too and fulfill your obligation as well. Why is that? Because since you can't be home, so there's no way for you to light. So therefore, they can do it for you. But the question is like this, right? What about if you don't have anybody at all? When you're
get home, you light it.
Right. But let's say you're not getting home that night. You're not going to be home. So what do you do, right? What do you do? So the thing is like this, right? If you go to a guest as a guest to somebody's house, and you're sleeping over in their house, so you have to participate in their lighting. Okay. What does that mean? That you give them like a little quarter or something, to participate in pay for it a little bit. In order that you should pay for the lights, you should have a share in that. That's the idea.
Bring your own candles.
But there's also an easier solution. Is that what he can give it to you as a gift? In other words, the host can say, "I don't want your quarter. I'll give you a piece of my candle. You get a little bit share in that. So I give you it as a gift." Right, and you acquire it as a gift. You don't have to actually pay for that, right? If he wants to be generous and save you the quarter, right? Save you whatever that little thing you want to give. So that's the way to do it. So you got to participate with him if you're staying over his house that night. Mm-hmm. So wherever you may be that night, that home that you're staying that night, that place, you have to light over there. That's the way it is. If somebody's lighting for you, you don't have to light at all. They're lighting for you, and even though, by the way, you're not going to hear their blessings, right? You're not going to hear them. You're not going to hear those blessings. They're going to do it. You can maybe hear it on your phone, but you're not really listening to the blessings itself, right? Because when you hear something over the phone, you're not really listening to the voice of that person. It's just like a tuki, a little birdie there, a little computer birdie that's mimicking the voice. It's not really. It's the real voice of the person, right? You know that, right? Obviously, it's computer generated. Electric, right? Exactly. So it's not really the real voice of the person. So you can listen to it and say Amen. Why? You know why? By the way, the truth is that if let's say you're listening you're on the phone, and you're hearing somebody make a bracha, you have to answer Amen on that bracha, even though you're not there. You don't really hear it, right? But you have to answer Amen. What's the reason why? Because even though you're not really hearing the actual voice of that person, but since you know it's being done now,
that it's real.
Yeah, it's being done right now, as he says so. So you have to answer Amen, even though you didn't really actually hear his voice. So therefore, a person can also do that in Chanuka. He can turn on the phone. Say, okay, let me hear that. You can answer Amen to the brachot that your wife is going to make, or your children, whatever it is, right? And you can fulfill your obligation like that. So there's all kinds of solutions for every problem, right? There's also another thing, right? They say, what about there was also another custom, which is to light the candles also in the shul, in the synagogue, right? Why do they do that, by the way? This is not anybody's house. You cannot really rely on that lighting and not light it at home. You cannot do that. Say, I'll hear it at the shul, so I won't light it at home. You cannot do that. Why? Because you can't fulfill your obligation from the lighting at the shul. You have to go home and do it again. So then why do they do it in the shul? Nobody really fulfills his obligation. So this was something which was made like a custom that came on later on. They made a custom like this in order to publicize the miracle. So they started to do it also in the synagogues. But you can't really fulfill your obligation over there. You know what I mean? At the same time. Why? Because you got to do it in your home. You got to do it in your house. Same thing, by the way, applies if you go, let's say, to a hotel, right? What do? You go to a hotel. You should light over there at the hotel, your home. The fire alarm will go off, probably, But that's okay, That's the way it goes, right? So you got to light wherever you are. Wherever you happen to be, you light over there. You get my point, right? So I want to tell you also some other interesting things, right? There are also some customs of Chanuka, right? One of them is to have cheese, like dairy stuff, dairy food. You know this, right? No. What's the reason, by the way, why they have the custom to eat cheese on Hanukkah? What's the reason? So it's supposed to remind us, as we said, right, of that very brave lady who chopped off the head of this guy, the governor. Right? Why? Because she gave him the milk, right? Exactly. So in order to commemorate that chop off the head chop, right? Yeah. So we eat dairy to remember that miracle that was made over there as well. That whole scene with that lady. You understand? Yehudit was her name. Yeah. So that's why we eat dairy. There's also another custom which is to eat sufganiyot, right? Donuts, stuff like this. You know what I mean?
Donuts.
Yeah. What's the reason why? I hope they're kosher. Whatever. So yeah, okay. I don't know.
They say it is.
Some of them are. I don't know if all of them are.
Carvel is kosher.
Huh? Carvel. God bless Carvel. Okay. So anyway, right? There's a custom to eat sufganiyot on Chanukah. It's not really an obligation. Don't get me wrong. It's a custom. Whatever. But there is actually one, Rabbi Maimon, who was the father of the Rambam. He says, right, talks about that. Eating the sufganiyot on Hanukkah. So you know what he says? He says a person should not skip over any custom that there is, in Israel. All these customs, you should keep them. If you can, he doesn't mind getting a little bit fat, getting a little weight, whatever. But he should keep them. Why? Because they all have a reason behind them. So even though it's just a custom, it's not really like a halakha, it's not really something from the Torah or something. But there's reasons that we do all these things. There's thoughts behind them. So what's the reason why? What's the reason why sufganiyot? Because since they're made in oil, so it commemorates to oil, right? The miracle of the oil. So all these things have a reason, right? So they say, right, that a person should keep these things. But obviously, this is not the most important things we're talking about on Hanukkah, to eat sufganiyot. But definitely has also some kind of a value there. There is something there. So a person should try to keep it. That's what he says. Rabbi Maimon, the father of the Rambam. Can you imagine this? Talking about 1,000 years ago.
And it must be olive oil. It can't be any other oil. It must be olive oil.
To make the sufganiyot?
All these things.
They don't use olive oil. It's too expensive. They're not going to use that. Right? Forget about that. Right? So there's also another interesting thing about Hanukkah, right? Which is what? That we don't have the seudot. We don't have meals. Usually for every Jewish holiday there's meals involved.
Right.
You know what I mean? For Hanukkah, it says the Shulchan Aruch, they didn't make any decree of meals, to have meals on what's the reason, by the way, why we don't have meals? So one idea I heard from my rabbi, Allah Shalom, Maran, he said that the reason was because it wasn't really a total victory, Hanukkah. There was a lack of there. It wasn't a smooth victory like the other victories. What does that mean? Some people died. There was some casualties there. In other words, Hanukkah it devastated the Jewish people. The whole Greek exile was a devastation. So we didn't really come out, 100% victorious. Even though there was a great miracle that was made there, but there was a lot of damage done as well, So therefore they say, right, because of that, that's the reason why they didn't make the seudot, they didn't make meals for this, because it wasn't really like such a happy occasion, as the other holidays. It wasn't such a smooth victory. So therefore they didn't make meals. They just all they made was to light the candles. But the truth is that there's also other things that we do as well. Right? What does that mean? We say the Ala Nisim prayer, Ala Nisim, right? Where do we say Ala Nisim? In Birkat HaMazon, grace after meals, we put it over there. We also put it into the Amidah, right? So a person has to say Ala Nisim in those prayers, right? In the silent prayer that we say in every day, 3 times a day, you have to put Ala Nisim in those places. But if you forgot to say it, right? Let's say, and you went on to the next blessing, you don't go back. What's the reason why you don't go back? Sometimes you have to go back. Let's say, for instance, if you missed Rosh Chodesh, right? The new moon. If you missed in the Amidah, and you didn't say Ya'aleh Ve'avo over there, for the Rosh Chodesh prayer, special prayer, you have to go back sometimes. Most of the time you have to go back. But in Hanukkah, you don't have to go back. So what's the reason why? Because Hanukkah is not considered to be as important as Rosh Chodesh. Just as an example. Why is Rosh Chodesh more important than Hanukkah? Because Rosh Chodesh is from the Torah. Hanukkah is only rabbinical, So it doesn't have the same status as Rosh Chodesh. So therefore, we're not so particular. There's also another reason why. Because in Birkat HaMazon, right, in the grace after meals, when you say that prayer, since they didn't really make a decree to have meals on Hanukkah, so therefore if you forgot to say it over there in grace after meals, it's not so important. Why? Because you're not really eating the meal for Hanukkah anyway. That's the reason why. So therefore, right, they said that you're not obligated to go back and to do it again. And there's also a practical thing here, right? Which is what? That sometimes what we do is, when we forget to say that insert for that holiday, we go back and do it again. What does that mean? If we didn't finish the blessing yet, Baruch Atah Hashem, right? Hatov, that bracha that we say, right? The Hoda'ah, thanking Hashem, right? So over there, what happens is like this, right? If you already said Baruch Atah Hashem, you mention the name of God, you don't go back anymore and say Ala Nisim. Why don't you go back anymore? But you didn't finish the blessing yet. But since you mentioned the name of God, there is actually a solution. The solution is you can say Lamdeni Chukecha. Why? Because this is like a verse in the Psalms, right? Lamdeni Chukecha. So you're turning it into a verse, into a pasuk. But since this pasuk, not everybody agrees that you can remedy that like that, because some say that once you said Baruch Atah Hashem, the name of God, you can't really anymore make it into a pasuk, into a verse. It's sort of like a blessing. It's a blessing in vain. So a blessing in vain is considered to be a big sin, So therefore you have to be very careful not to make a blessing in vain. So what they did was, right, in order to avoid that, they said that what? Says the Chida. Says the Chida that even if you said Baruch Atah Hashem, don't say Lamdeni Chukecha now and try to remedy like this, and then go back and say Ala Nisim. Why? Because since Ala Nisim, even if you missed it, you fulfilled your obligation anyway. So therefore, right, says the Rav Chida, that the solution is like this, right? Go on and finish. Don't go back and say Lamdeni Chukecha. Don't try to remedy by making it into a verse, and it shouldn't be like a blessing made in vain. So says the Chida, keep going, because if you go back, according to Rambam, doing it this way, it doesn't really remedy the problem. So you still have a blessing in vain. So says the Chida, just finish it and go on, because even if you go on and you finish it, you still have fulfilled your obligation, b'diavad, right, after the fact. So says the Chida, that a person should not go back. But if he didn't say the name of God yet, right? He said just Baruch Atah. So then he should go back. Why? Because he doesn't have that problem anymore, right? He didn't say the name of God. So if he says Baruch Atah, and all of a sudden he goes, I forgot to say Ala Nisim. So then go back and say Ala Nisim, and finish the blessing after, because you didn't say the name of God yet. So it's not a blessing in vain. This is the difference, So everything has its own rules. So what else should we talk about? We should talk about also the issue of Hallel, right? Every day the prayers in the morning we say the Hallel. What is the Hallel? It's a special praises to God that we say on holidays like Pesach and Sukkot and Rosh Chodesh, all kinds of places, right? So on Chanuka we say the full Hallel. What does that mean? With the blessing before, the blessing after, everything, the whole thing, with all the paragraphs, the full, total, full-blown Hallel, not the half one like we do, like not the small one that we do on Rosh Chodesh. On Rosh Chodesh we say a small one, we say mini Hallel. So on Hanukkah we say the big Hallel, which includes the whole thing, like we do on the other holidays as well, some other holidays. So Hanukkah has also this element, right, of Hallel, and also every day on Hanukkah, every day we bring out the Torah. So that means that every day 3 people will go up to the Torah and read. Yeah, every day on Hanukkah we bring out the Torah. So it changes also the structure of the prayers as well. Right, we're going to say Hallel.
The tefillin stays on, right?
Yeah, the tefillin will stay on. Yes. You know why? Because when do we take off the tefillin? We take it off from Musaf. On Hanukkah there is no Musaf. What is Musaf? It's an additional prayer that they say, right? On some holidays. On Hanukkah there is no Musaf. So therefore, what we do is we don't say Musaf, and we can keep the tefillin on all the way right till the end of the prayers, and this way.
The tefillin doesn't go on when for Passover.
So one of the days that we don't put tefillin, right? All the rabbinical holidays we put tefillin. You know why? Because the rabbis didn't have the power really to cancel out the mitzvah tefillin. There are some exceptions to that, by the way, that rule. So, but in general,
no
I'm sorry.
Passover, there's no tefillin.
On Passover, all the days of Passover, no tefillin, right? All the way, all the 7 days.
Sukkot
right? Sukkot, we have 9 days, no tefillin, right over there.
Okay. And then there's a couple of days here and there. Also.
Shavuot also 2 days, no tefillin, right? So as well, right?
What else?
What else do we have? That's about it. That's 3 festivals basically.
What is Shavuot?
And also on Shabbat, obviously, right?
When is Shavuot?
Shavuot is the 50th day after the Pesach, right?
The 50
days after Pesach.
7 weeks, 7 times.
Right,
7,
exactly,
7,
yeah.
All right.
So that's what Shavuot. right? So all these times we don't put tefillin. But these holidays, which are only rabbinical, Chanuka and Purim, we put tefillin. Why? Because it doesn't have such a holiness.
They are rabbinical.
It doesn't have such a holiness like the holidays from the Torah. But actually, there is a difference between Ashkenazim and Sephardim, right? That in the Sephardi world, on the intermediate days of Pesach and Sukkot, we don't put tefillin at all throughout the holiday. There are some Ashkenazim that put tefillin on the intermediate days.
Yeah.
What does that mean? From the third day, right, or second day, depending on if you're in Israel or whatever, they put it right until the last day, and then the last day they don't put so they put in the intermediate.
Either or,
or
vice versa, does put tefillin or doesn't put tefillin.
Right.
Will an Ashkenazi or Sephardi be committing a sin or?
Yeah, you have to keep your custom, when it comes to these things. But really,
because putting the tefillin, Rabbi, is a big thing.
Right.
It's not just a custom; it's a big thing.
Right, but
so I mean, if one Jew misses it because of his custom, or the other Jew because of his custom, does put it on.
Yeah.
You're not talking about just breaking a little rabbinical thing here.
Right, but the truth is, it's interesting. Why is it, by the way, on these holidays we don't put tefillin? What's the reason why? Because they say, right, tefillin is an ot. What does that mean, ot? That means it's a sign between us and God. And
yet a custom
you know what that means?
Overpowers the
I'll explain to you.
The power of tefillin.
It's a sign between us and God. What does that mean? It shows that God is with us. Tefillin, it's a bond between us and God.
So if Ashkenazi puts on the tefillin, that day when a Sephardi doesn't have to, the Ashkenazi is closer to God.
Let me explain to you.
Yeah.
So.
Question. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
Good question.
Good question, but you're not letting me answer. Okay, so I got the question. I got it. I understand you. I understand you. He wants to sharpen the question. He wants to sharpen it. Okay. So the answer is like this. You have to understand, right? When it comes to tefillin, it's a sign between us and God. So we have to do it every day to make a sign that everybody should know that we are the people of God, chosen people, and the sign of, God is with us. That's the idea, right? So, but on the holiday itself is also a sign. You understand? What does that mean? On Shabbat and the holidays, the sign is the holiday itself. So therefore, the says the Gemara, you don't need two signs. It's like you're.
So the Ashkenazi. So okay.
But wait. Be patient.
So the Ashkenazi.
I got the question, David. Let me answer now. Okay, I got the question. I got the question. You don't have to say 5 times. So I got the question. So it's like this, right? That this is a sign, as we said, right? So on holiday you don't need a sign.
Okay.
You understand?
On certain holiday.
Right, those holidays from the Torah, also on Shabbat, you don't need, because those holidays are itself a sign.
Okay. Right.
Okay, now you got that, right? So if you do put it, by the way, it's no good. Why? Because you're kind of denying the holiday. Like you don't believe in the holiday. You don't really believe that the holiday is a sign. So this is the reason why. It's not good to do that. It's like a sin. To put it on the holiday. So now the question is regarding those intermediate days. What about those days, right? So over there's 2 opinions brought down in Talmud. There's one opinion that says that those days are also a sign because they're part of the holiday. It's all one package, basically. You understand? That's one opinion. The other opinion is that those days are more like weekdays. So therefore, they're not really a sign. Two opinions in the Gemara. That's why we have 2 different customs. Now, things like this, right? But in the Zohar, we find that it goes like the opinion that those days are also a sign. So therefore, the Zohar says that we shouldn't put tefillin on the intermediate days either. So therefore, what happened was that once the Zohar was revealed in the Jewish people, about 500 years ago or so, or whatever, so then what happened was that most people started to do like the Zohar because they saw that the Zohar corroborates that opinion that says that those days are also a sign. You understand? So therefore, there are some Ashkenazi who are staunch people, staunch. They stick to their custom. They didn't change because of the Zohar. They said, listen, we have a custom. That's how it says in the Talmud. We have our opinion and everything, so we're doing good. Right. So, you understand? But the problem is like this, right? That since most of the Jews don't put tefillin on Chol HaMoed, on the intermediate days, so therefore, if you don't really have a custom, you're not really sure what your custom is. You didn't grow up in a Jewish religious family, so you should not put tefillin. Why? Because the prevailing opinion nowadays It's like the Zohar, that we don't put tefillin. And even, by the way, the ones who put tefillin on the Ashkenazim, that put tefillin on the holidays, they do without a blessing. They don't make a blessing. Why? Because even they admit that there's two opinions, and therefore maybe bless a blessing in vain. Right? They put it without a blessing. Right? Exactly. So because they're not really sure.
Don't say anything.
Right? Exactly. They just put it on. Right? So that shows you, by the way, that they're not really so sure. Right? Nobody's really sure. Right? If you can do that such a thing like that.
Now,
I
know that this has nothing to do with this teaching. This week's thing, or Hanukkah, but. I walked into Hapisgah once on a holiday where we don't eat meat.
Right.
Or at least the Sephardim, we can eat meat.
Yes.
Okay? Well, I wasn't sure. I told the kids, I think Hapisgah is closed. Hapisgah is a steakhouse, kosher steakhouse. So we walked in there, and it's open. So I went in, and the guy I know, the manager there,
right.
Moshe, the tall guy with the blue eyes and the beard. I said to him, what's going on here? He goes, the Ashkenazim, we eating the meat. I said, how could that be? I mean,
right.
It's a holy Jewish holiday. Either we eat it or we don't.
Yes.
So he looks up at the ceiling and he goes, okay, I'm telling you the reason why. Because the Ashkenazi, they suffer more in their life. In history, they keep this holiday to be more holy. And the Sephardim, they didn't suffer throughout the history so much. We are allowed to eat meat. What was with that?
Well, I think that this guy's a little bit misinformed, but I must tell you that regarding these kinds of things, there are poskim, halachic authorities, including Moreno Rabbeinu Maran. He wrote about this. The question is like this, right? Are you allowed, as a restaurant, allowed to serve on a fast day? To be open and to let people eat, and also days which they don't eat meat, they eat meat. So they say that you should let them to eat meat. You should sell. You're allowed to sell meat on a day that the customer is not to eat meat. You know why? The reason is because if you don't give them meat, they'll eat non-kosher. They'll go to a non-kosher restaurant.
I see.
So therefore, since it's only a custom, and it's not by everybody, this custom. There are people. Some people keep it.
But which
some people don't keep it.
Talking about?
I'm not exactly. You tell me. You were the one who was there.
We have only one holiday. I think it's a week where we don't consume meat.
Right, right. So there's one difference, right? The Ashkenazim and Sephardim are the same. There's only one difference, right? On Rosh Chodesh, the Sephardim do eat meat, and Ashkenazim don't eat meat.
Rosh Chodesh.
Rosh Chodesh, right? That's all.
And that's a week. Right?
It's just one day.
It's one day.
It's one day, yeah.
What about Tisha B'Av? We eat meat on Tisha B'Av.
Tisha B'Av, we fast altogether. We don't eat anything, right? We don't eat anything.
Right.
Yeah. We're sitting on the floor.
So the nonsense with the Ashkenazim suffering more.
No, that's a little bit.
Yeah, it's a tale.
And
right, exactly.
Called Shavuot.
Yes, Shavuot.
Yes, not Rosh Chodesh. You said the holiday is Rosh Chodesh.
No, I didn't say that. The rabbi said that.
No, I think you misunderstood.
Okay, whatever. Anyway, the point is, right, that they say that, even though some people don't eat and some people do eat, that's not your business, You have a restaurant. You know what I mean? You don't know who's allowed to eat, But if they say also, that even if the person who's not allowed to eat, if you don't give him, he may go to a place which is not kosher,
So that holiday is not that strict. We still can eat meat.
Well, even I think we're talking about Rosh Chodesh, right? Rosh Chodesh of Av. That's. I think that's what we're talking about.
Do you eat it?
Right. So the Sephardim do eat meat that day.
You eat it.
Yeah, we eat. Yeah, we eat. Ashkenazim don't eat meat. It's a different custom. That's all.
Yeah, again, I had to bring it up.
Yeah,
because it's like the tefillah.
It's not because we suffered or didn't suffer. Just the rabbis made certain customs.
Well, maybe it's true that because of what the Ashkenazis went through.
Yeah, the Ashkenazis have been through.
The tragedies they went through.
Yeah.
Maybe that kind of forces him.
No, I can agree with that because
maybe that's what he
the Ashkenazim are more stringent regarding these customs because they had a harder time in the exile. Europe was a very difficult exile.
Yeah.
A lot of people were killed there. There was a lot of pogroms. There's all kinds of things there. The Jews suffered greatly in Europe.
Yeah. So that element of what he mentioned, maybe that's what.
Yeah, there's certainly a basis to that. There's no basis to that. There's no question about that. There is a basis. Yeah. The Ashkenazim have, if you look in the Shulchan Aruch, by the way. Look at the Ashkenazi customs and Sephardi customs, you find is 80% of the time, Ashkenazim are more stringent.
Right.
Right. Because they had to make more enactments in Europe, because the situation in Europe was more dire.
Yeah.
was more. It's one of the reasons why.
With you and your wife, because I know Rachel is Ashkenazi. How did you come?
Yeah, but when you get married, the wife has to go to your
that's right.
That's the way it works, right?
So you became Ralph Cramden from the honeymoon.
Alice.
Yeah. This is my castle, Alice.
I didn't know.
You're nothing. You're nothing here. A peasant. Just what did he call
I didn't know. David, I didn't know I was that heavy. I didn't know.
This is ridiculous.
Okay. So anyway, Rabbi, as we said, right, that the holiday of Hanukkah is very, very special in the sense that the person has to be very careful to light the candles.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be, whether you're late a little bit or a little bit early, whatever it is, but make sure you light.